这一期呢，我请到了资深的地产投资商 McElroy。
I never buy anything based on I hope it goes up ever。
我相信呢，在这儿看影片的朋友们哈，里面肯定有知道他是谁的。那今天呢，我们就会聊一下，从他的角度上来说呢，怎么样去看一个地产项目，它到底值不值得投资。
The good deals really do get done on the back of a napkin。
那对于他来讲呢，什么样的项目算是一个好项目呢？另外呢，也说一下他到底是怎么样找到各式各样的商业机会的。这一期的文字稿呢，就在描述栏里面哈，大家如果喜欢阅读的话呢，可以点进去看一下。那我之前很多影片的文字稿呢也在里面，还有那个学术材料的链接。咱们先说一个，就是为什么等着地产增值这策略呢？它并不是一个好策略。
I never buy anything based on I hope it goes up ever. So now I want it to, of course, right? And so if you're buying a broken property, I call that forced equity. So I'm actually creating it myself. But if you're buying something and waiting for the market to get better, that is the number one worst strategy ever. You just don't know if it'll happen. Everybody wants it to happen, but so what you always do, to your point, is it needs to cash flow first. So like I bought properties in 2005 in Austin, Texas, at the exact wrong time. I mean, the market tanked, as we know. 2006, 2007, 2008 was not a good time in the U.S. So what saved my butt? Cash flow. So the cash flow, because I kept the properties full, it cash flowed. I had fixed rate debt on it, and the occupancies. All I had to do was manage it well during that time. So the value of the property went down from 2005 to 2008, but it didn't matter because I wasn't trying to sell it. I wasn't trying to refinance it. I was at that point just trying to hold on and keep it full. And so that's what we did. And so the cash flow saved us during that period of time. Then, of course, about 2010, which is about 5 years later, rent started to grow again. And by 2012, we started to see rent growth. And of course, we were kind of out of hot water. Now, it was a 7-year investment. It still kicked off cash flow. The value went all over the place, right? Because, the market had to clean itself up and all of those things. But it didn't matter to me because I was in a position where I could hold it. I wasn't funding it. We could just hold it and manage it really well and wait for the market to return back. And it did.
So the price of the property really doesn't matter until you decide to refi.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then we ended up exiting that property for quite a bit as a result of we just had to wait for the market to correct.
I also know there's a story about you. You mentioned that you used to be like a C student in school. Like I have to confess that I used to be a C student in microeconomics when I was in college. I hated it. I was like, there's no freaking way I'm gonna get into anything that's related to this. How did you even think about getting into business in like a real estate related field?
Well, let's put it this way. I love to learn. I just didn't like the way I was being taught, right? So I didn't like, I was sitting in a seat listening to somebody talk for hours. Drove me nuts. And so well, once I got out of college, then actually the dots started to connect. I was listening, but I have a tough time just sitting for hours listening to somebody and then taking a test on that because my mind's wandering all over the place. And so what happened was when I was in college, I actually started managing an apartment building for rent because my parents didn't have a lot of money, and I was actually in college on an athletic scholarship, and so I was basically managing an apartment building, and I quickly realized that the owner would come and he would say, "Thank you for keeping the place full and making it look great." And we had a great month. And what after took me a while, but after 4 or 5 months, I was like, I'm on the wrong side of the desk. I need to be the owner, not the manager. So I had I would say the first 8 or 9 years, I had a lot of experience on the management side, property management. And so what that did is it really opened my eyes as to what to buy. Because as a management company or a manager, you have to go fix the occupancy, get good tenants, manage the expenses, make sure that the property itself is being maintained well, make sure there's cash flow, work with the debt. So all the stuff, that's what the manager does. So by the time I got to buy them, I really, really understood on, first of all, what to look for. Because I would always try to find broken properties or properties that had problems, because when you can fix a problem, you can create value for yourself and for your investors. And so I think the property management route for me particularly opened my eyes to how I could become wealthy.
When you said broken properties, how broken is to the level that you think you can fix it? Because there's got to be a level that you feel like, oh, you know, this property doesn't worth saving.
Yeah. Oh, it's a really easy formula. So what you do is you say, if this property was perfect today and you add up all the costs, what would it be worth? So you start there. Like if after I fix this thing, you know, is it worth what is it, you know, because you can over improve something right now. So, but there's been so many properties where I've bought from, let's say, a bank that's been 50% occupied, you know, really poorly run, high expenses, high delinquency, bad tenants, but extremely well located. And when we fix it, all of a sudden it's worth significantly more than obviously what we got it for. So the whole game is, again, it's a really good point. Do you really want to catch a falling knife, right? Like you don't want to take on somebody else's problem unless when you fix it, it's better. It's no different than, you know, like finding an old car, you know, like you put a paint job on it, you fix the interiors, you put new tires on it, maybe it needs some engine work. After all of that work, is the car worth more or less, right? In other words, did you over improve the car? Exact same scenario with real estate. You know, so there has to be significant upside after you fix it. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
So when you say catching a falling knife, there's like multiple knives that you have to avoid catching when you're evaluating a deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically, maybe it's a market trend, maybe it's a location. Like, which knife do you think is worth catching than the other?
Well, I think if you just go back to the real estate is not very smart. Like it's just not. Like it functions. It just sits there. And so what happens is the human tries to make sense of something, you know, so they buy in a really bad location as an example, and then they over improve it and they don't understand why they can't get any tenants. So the very first thing, as always, is you always want to be somewhere where other people want to be, because real estate is only good if somebody's in it. You know, if there's somebody wants to move their office there, or somebody wants to put a store in there, or there's an industrial, or maybe it's a multifamily, or it's a self-storage. If it's on the edge of town and you're having a heck of a time getting people, then that's your problem. You know, you bought in the wrong spot. So you can buy, you know, the best deals are ones that are really, really well located, but they have a lot of problems. So they're poorly managed, whatever it might be. You know, there's always scenarios where there's really, really well located real estate that really needs help. And so that's really the first thing, because when you fix it, you want it to you want it to be in the best location where everybody wants to be. So depending on what kind of real estate, you know, location is absolutely positively everything.
我们知道哈，现在在美国呢，这个房价是居高不下的，就是住宅那种房子哈。那住宅市场的这个房价跟在租房市场里面这个房租之间这关系大概是什么样的呢？又有哪些因素是我们可以比较简单的去观察到，那可以直接影响房租的价格呢？
What's really interesting is when somebody can buy a home that's actually counter-cyclical to the rental market. So in other words, like a home builder is trying to find a renter to buy a house, right? So people either rent or they own. And so what happens is they're actually a little bit opposite. So when home prices are high and interest rates are high, the mortgage payment's high. And so you have high property tax, high insurance, high utilities, high mortgage, high home prices. What's happening in the US right now is it's putting a lot of pressure on the rental market because people can't afford a home right now because the prices are high and interest rates are high. And so we're actually finding there's a big fallout of people that would normally be buying houses, putting pressure on the rental market today. And so what happens is when mortgages and rents are about the same, then a renter is going to choose a house. But when mortgages are significantly higher, then in a lot of cases they can't afford the house and they're going to stay in a rental. And so when you're looking at where to invest, you're always trying to find the biggest difference. You want to invest in apartment building, for example, around high-end housing. So I just bought a property in Henderson, Nevada, called Alta, Nevada, and it's a really affluent suburb just outside of Las Vegas. And it's the homes in the area. It's right next to a Whole Foods, right next to a Starbucks, right next to a Lululemon. But the high end, the homes in the area are $2, $3, $4 million. So when you're looking to buy, the renter to be able to afford a $2 to $3 to $4 million home in that area, it's a big jump. And so that's one of the factors that you look at. That's why we don't really look like, let's say, in some of the areas of the Midwest. Let's just pick on Cleveland, Ohio, for example. So in Cleveland, Ohio, if your rent's $1,000 and your mortgage is $1,200 in the neighborhood right next door, we would probably pass. But if you go to like where we are in Henderson, Nevada, where the rents are $2,000 and the mortgages are $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, then we like those markets because of that delta. So that's one of the factors that we always look at when we're investing.
I remember you mentioned how you track migration is by looking at where U-Haul goes.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's a tremendous amount of data that tells where people are. One of the really more interesting ones is this. Like, you can easily tell where somebody is with their cell phone. The crime, people use this for crime all the time. So it's not that hard to see, where are people going and what's the stress. So I know, like during COVID, during the pandemic, they were checking like how many people are riding the subway in and out, to the city, and how many cell phones are in the city. So that's one way. Now that's migration here and there. You can also do it with housing. You can do it with rentals. But the other ways, of course, and especially in the U.S., are driver's licenses. When people move to an area, the post office is another one because there's a change of address. All the moving companies like U-Haul, North American Van Lines, Atlas, they all have the data that shows, this person moved from Seattle to Phoenix one way. Okay, that's just a data point, right? So if they send the truck back empty, you can pretty much be assured that they moved there. So there's all these ways like that, and there's all these services that track it. So what you want, again, back to why would you buy in an area? You want to buy where people are going. And so just think of, for example, like there's all kinds of pockets. And so think of what happens when 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 people move to an area like Phoenix or Dallas or Atlanta or whatever. What does it do? What it does is it puts pressure on the school system. It puts pressure on getting a restaurant reservation. It puts pressure on the for sale housing market. It puts pressure on the rental market. So, and then the opposite works too. When people move away, same thing. It puts negative pressure on all of those things. And so what happens a lot of times is as people move around, it makes a huge difference on you knowing where that is, because you can really capitalize on the fact that people are moving to an area. Because for me, I can be as good as I am in managing something, but if there's not a steady flow of people coming there for jobs, for work, for retirement, my occupancy is going to be low, and I'm going to be spending a lot of money on advertising and try to get people to come there. But if there's always a lot of people moving to the area, your real estate is going to do far better. And so that's why that little bit of research on picking the market before the property, the market is more important than the property, because once you vet the market and say, this is a great market, this is where we want to be, then you go in and you start to look at the properties. And because you know that whatever you buy is going to have that kind of future demand.
What state or what cities are you looking at this moment?
So yes, from a state, so we're looking at Nevada, we're looking at Arizona, and we're looking at Texas. So we're in all those markets, and there are plenty of other markets to invest in, but for us, we want to be experts in those areas. But the thing is, like, when you invest in, like, let's say Las Vegas, we have property there. There are really good areas and really, really, really bad areas. So you got to be careful. You can't just invest in Las Vegas. You have to invest in, because on one side of the street can be great, on another side of the street cannot be great. And so there, real estate is really nuanced. And so you got to be very careful about, where you're going to land in those areas.
And then for different state, they have different kind of policies on eviction. I think that's very important for any landlord.
Government policies are everything right now, especially now. We really pay attention to that. Like, as you start to see, you're going to start to see rent control, and you're going to start to see rent caps, and you're going to start to see them increasing property tax. And there's all these taxes and things that they do to the citizens and the people, because that's how the government finances stuff. And then also they're either pro landlord or pro tenant. Now, I actually think there should be an even balance personally. I mean, in other words, I think the tenants really deserve proper rights. I think the landlords deserve proper rights. And I think it's pretty clear. Like, if a tenant decides they don't want to pay, then the landlord should be able to do the appropriate things that are within the law to be able to remove the tenant so they can put another one in there. And so what you see is the different states have different views on that. And so you got to be careful on where you buy, for sure.
从 Ken 的角度上来说，那他在看了这么多地产项目以后，在他的眼里面，什么样的项目才叫一个好项目？
When you look at the good deal, like, what are you looking at? If it's just from somebody give you a napkin and explained it, and there's got to be a few points that you look at and be like, oh, this is a good deal.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, why would you buy something? The only reason you would buy something is to make more money with your money than you would if it's sitting in a high interest account, right? So I would say that's what you're fighting against. So if somebody's in let's say a high interest savings account at 4%, if you're going to take that money out of there, that better make more, you know what I mean? Better make more than 4, because otherwise, why would you do it? So, so that's the first thing. So if I'm going to take $100,000 and put it into something, I'm going to want it to make 8, 9, 10%. So it's always based on return. So the math is quite simple. You've got your income minus your expenses. That's simple. And minus your debt. And then that's cash flow. So every single thing I do is income minus expenses minus debt, cash flow. And then you take your cash flow and you divide it into your investment. and it either is above 4% or it's not. And so that's the simple model. Now there's a lot of things that come into the income, and there's a lot of things that come into the expenses, and there's a lot of things that come into debt. But in its simplest form, you want to take a look at, does this cash flow? And I think what happens is a lot of times people make it really complicated. I try to make it really simple. I think it can be complicated. There's lots of things inside of those equations, but my job is I like to look at things really simply. I have a saying: the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. Like, it just always seems to be that way. You just, if it's all full of pictures and gloss and some kind of a book and all this stuff with these beautiful people in it, yeah, like there's just too much going on. There's the good deals really do get done on the back of a napkin, sitting at a restaurant or a bar. I'm telling you. And then from there, you put them into a business plan, and you put the investors together. But they're usually pretty simple to understand. And I think a lot of times people make them more complicated than they need to be.
If there are two kind of deals sitting in front of them, one is, let's say, is a single family deal, maybe like 10 single family together, and they're gonna do value added rent out together. Another one would be, let's say, a multifamily apartment complex, and the returns are similar. So when the returns are getting similar but slightly different kind of asset, how do you differentiate? Okay, this is the one for me. Yeah. How the other one is not?
So the first thing would be the risks, right? So what are the risks? The risks are who is important? Like how long have the people on the multifamily side been doing this? How long have the people on the 10 single families been doing this? That's really, really, really important, because the learning curves and the network and the team and all the stuff behind the who is the most important thing. The second thing is how did they underwrite it? You got to check the numbers, right? So for me, it would be really simple to take a look at the multifamily very quickly, because it's all in one location. So it's not as diverse, but you could, if the market supports itself and the underwriting makes sense, then the multifamily checks all the boxes, then you move over to the single family ones. Now, so you got 10 different transactions. So that's more risk. You got 10 different markets, 10 different buyers, 10 different this, 10 different that. So for me, now it could be that the multifamily deal isn't good at all. And then of course you would gravitate. So for me, that's how I would assess it all: the market, the underwriting, the assumptions, the risk. With if you're going to keep the properties, then it's going to be, what are the rents, and what's the occupancy, right? That's going to drive everything. And then what are the expenses, and of course, what is the debt, all that kind of stuff. Now on the 10, there could be a lot of good strategies. You have a lot more flexibility. So maybe you rent all 10 and then you sell one per year for the next 10 years and you 1031s. So, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Whereas the multifamily, it's probably something you got to keep long-term. And when you sell it, then, you have to replace all of that as opposed to 1/10 or 2/10. So there's all these different factors that you need to look at, but that's a really, really good question.
So at Limitless, there are different kind of speakers in different kind of asset class, right? I remember last year, last year, I think Robert Kennedy was there also. Yeah. It was pretty cool. I saw the pictures of that. What kind of speakers do you have on your event?
So we have Jim Rickards, who wrote many books. One is called Currency Wars. He's coming and speaking. He's going to be unbelievable. He used to work in the Pentagon. He's got a real inside view. We have another guy, Larry Lepard, who wrote a book called The Big Print. He's coming. We got George Gammon, who has a huge following online, and he does an annual event called Rebel Capitalist, and he talks about Bitcoin, gold, hedge funds. He does a lot of stock trading and stuff like that. Really, 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 really smart. We got obviously Robert Kiyosaki coming, and we've got these folks that are just going to crush it. The way that they look at the world is so different than I do as a real estate guy. And then I'm always confused about gold. Why is gold up or down and all that stuff, physical gold? So we have a real estate or a gold panel with Mike Maloney and Dana Samuelson as an example. And Mike Maloney owns goldsilver.com. And he's written multiple books. And so they're going to talk about why, because I called them up. I said, why did gold last year at Limitless, gold was a little over 2,000 an ounce, and now it's over 3,000 an ounce. So the question is it going to go higher? Is it going to come back? Where are we? I don't know the answer. And so I want these people in the room so I could make educated decisions myself, because I also am not all in real estate. I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. Where are the tax loopholes? Where are the niche real estate ideas? Because I'm managing my money just like everyone else. And so that's what Limitless is for. And it's going to be super exciting.
如果大家想7月底的时候去看的这个活动的话呢，那可以现在截个图，我给大家搞了一个折扣码。刚才我们讨论了一下什么样的项目是一好项目哈，但是有的时候呢，我们不光需要有分辨好项目的能力，还需要有一种直觉，就是什么地方可能会出现好的商业点子。当然呢，这种直觉很多时候也是来自于经验的积累哈。
You bought a land with a billboard on it.
Yeah.
Somehow you generated cash flow on it. It was very fascinating. I heard this story like a few years ago. So when you say you don't buy land, but there's an exception, right?
Well, that was different. Yeah, that actually, what I really wanted was the billboard, and that's a true story. It's a small piece of land on a major road, and the reason why it hadn't been built on yet is because it was on a major road. So I bought the land, and then I put what's called an easement around the billboard. And then I sold the land and I kept the billboard for free. And now that billboard, I still own the billboard, but it generates, thousands of dollars a month in advertising revenue. So I basically got the billboard for free. That is the exception, and I sold the land. Luckily, this is completely luck, where I bought the land and then the land price had gone up. It took maybe 6 months or 9 months to get the easement and all the legal done for the billboard itself. So I owned it for less than a year. But the point is, luckily the land had gone up just a little bit to where I was able to basically sell the land for about what I paid.
I know you're doing billboard recently also. Like, is that is that why you got into billboard, because luckily you got a land with a billboard on top and you find out that's a good way to generate cash flow?
Yeah, great question. So I was already buying billboards. That's why I recognized it. So what happens with real estate, Joy, as you know, you could be driving down the road, and if you're not in the real estate game, you're not really seeing what's on the left or the right of you. Now, if you're a single family investor, you're probably looking at that. If you're an office person, you're probably looking at that. If you're a multifamily, maybe something different, maybe an industrial. And so what happens is, as you start to be in the business long enough and you start to do self-storage and billboards and all these different things, you actually see quite a bit, so it really is what you see. And so I was already buying billboards, and the reason why I like billboards is because they don't have tenants. You don't have to deal with evictions or people issues or anything like that. They're
fixing
literally
furnitures and stuff.
Yeah,
it's
it's just a flat screen in the sky, right? And so I just bought one in Columbus, Ohio, and it does about $20,000 a month. It's digital and it's two-sided. So we has ads on both sides as you're going both directions. And so when you're trying to find these, you want to make sure they're super well located. and of course advertisers want to be on them, and so I learned about billboards quite some time ago. We've been investing in them over the last 10 years, and now my partner and I, Ross, are really actually doubling down. We're actually buying quite a bit more. I just put another 6 in escrow between Las Vegas all the way up to Mesquite, Nevada, on the way to Salt Lake City, and so we really like the billboard space because it's has really, really favorable tax. It qualifies for what's called bonus depreciation, which is considered equipment. It's considered a land improvement.
Okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's really, really cool where you actually can buy the real estate, or you can buy the billboard on a leased piece of land, and you get to depreciate 100% of it. Right. So you invest $100,000 and you get almost a $200,000 tax
benefit.
Tax benefit. So, but of course you get cash flow and all that kind of stuff too. So there's a lot of reasons why we like them. Also, a lot of people don't. A lot of counties and cities and don't like billboards. So they're hard to find, and they're really, really hard to get new ones. And so if you can find them, then we like to hold them. And these are, Joy, 25, 40, 50-year leases.
That's way better than you have 1 year, 2 year tenants staying in your apartment.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at a deal right now in Las Vegas with Walmart, and we would put a billboard on a Walmart. It's a 25-year lease with Walmart. We pay them a monthly fee for access, and then we put the billboard up, and then we will do $20,000, $30,000 a month on that billboard.
It's almost like once you before you buy a car, I feel like nobody's driving that car until you buy a car, and then you feel like everybody's driving the same car. It's about the experience and attention, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting business. It's a niche business. It's not something a lot of people think about. But at this point in my career, I've got 10,000 apartments, 10,000 tenants, 10,000 opinions. So when you have billboards, all you got to do is find a person that wants to put an ad on it. So it's very different.
总结一下，这期里边呢，我们大概讲了一下，那对于这种有长期主义的这个地产投资商来说，他看重的其实最主要的还是这个地产作为一个资产能给他带来多少现金流，而不是说单纯的等着这个地产随着时间增值。那当然作为建商的话这思维肯定跟这种长期持有的思路是不太一样的。那在挑选项目的时候呢，有很多的这个参考数据和思考的决策点，像比较简单的就是像人口迁移啊，地产的这个地点啊，那复杂一点的就是说要怎么样去运营这个地产，那什么样的资产配合上什么样的策略，这跟项目好坏其实都有关系哈。但是一句话来总结，到底什么样的项目是一好项目，就是说如果说这项目是一好项目，那这个项目的商业逻辑应该可以在一张餐巾纸那么大小的一个范围里面就能给你说清楚。也就是说，这市场里面好的一些项目反而是看似最简单的，那不是说需要非常复杂的专业词汇才能说明白的。因为说到底就是做商业这个事儿呢，主要还是说看你能够找到或者说你能接触到什么样的机会，那跟你能说出多少专业词汇这关系不是特大。如果说没有善于发现机会的眼睛的话呢，学多少专业词汇解决不了这问题啊。所以说呢，如果说一项目只能用专业词汇才能说明白的话，那这项目在现实层面上可能不一定太好实现。那好吧，我们这一期呢就先说这么多，我们下期见。